Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. Nothing happened yesterday, right? It was boring day.
Except I
Uh,
lost a day. Like I literally, up
uh,
until 10 minutes ago, I thought today was Monday.
yeah.
I did. Actually, just vamp for a minute. I got to get this. Sorry.
I see that's the thing. It's like it's weird that the NHL has trade deadline on a Monday, but if you think about it, it's all weekend that they're leading up to it. So really, it's not. It's not a situation where I mean, you could do it in the middle of the week. You could do it whatever. I mean, all I know is that what we had yesterday, and I was honest during the webcast. I had Sportsnet's coverage on my TV. I had TSN's coverage on my laptop. I had on my second screen. I had Twitter going so I could see.
I was just watching Twitter because I knew everybody else is watching everything else.
And I was talking about this with some friends this morning, and it's like, and I've told this story before. Flashback to the 80s, before the computer age, and I'm calling sports phone, like sports phone based out of New York City. It was the only
Howie Carpin for Sports Phone.
Don LaGrega and a few other people. Well, anyway, so I like the next month, my mother would get the phone bill with like 40 calls to a 914 area code.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, what the hell is this? It's like, I need an update because, at that time in the 80s, like the sports was not even a 20-minute update on the news radio stations. There were no sports radio stations.
They did it every half hour, I think.
Yeah. And I'm like, and they weren't going to give you like a detailed, like, well,
no.
So, sports.
You just had to get the crumbs. That's it.
Right, sports phone, and later on when I did fantasy football, sports phone was the only one that would say, "Well, it was a 96-yard pass from Don Makowski to Robert Brooks
James Lofton.
James Lofton." Yeah, so you'd only get the trade, and they would go through because there were no games on a Monday afternoon in March.
Right.
So they would, Ivan Boldarev and Darcy Rhoda were traded from Vancouver to, so it was that's the only place you could get. Anyway, so
here's the quick pre-show. So now we're just not going to get slanderous here, but we're going to just speak in facts.
Okay.
The fact that the Cleveland Browns gave Deshaun Watson the largest guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL may be the worst look that the NFL has had in the last 10 years. And that's saying something.
Well,
but remembering all of the allegations, which again, none of them have gone away. They've just gone away in criminal court, not in civil court. Just the other part where this year they're paying him the least amount of money because they know he's going to get suspended and he won't lose that much money. Just for an organization to have a guy like that be the face of a franchise, wow. I am blown away as to how bad the NFL looks now.
I'm sure massage parlors in Cleveland are looking forward to the return of the trade of Deshaun Watson to Cleveland. Well, yeah, see that, and that's an interesting aspect of the collective bargaining agreement for the NFL, that they can only fine, or he would lose like 6 games. Say he gets suspended for 6 games. They can only dock his pay for 6 games worth of his base salary. So what they did is in year 1, they gave it all a signing bonus.
Yeah.
So he's going to get his lump sum of like $30 million or whatever the hell it is.
And he's going to make $1 million on the base salary. And again, that just sets a great example. So if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, congrats, slow clap to you. You got to be proud to wear that.
Okay.
This is not the fans' fault. Believe me. I get it.
No. This is not exclusive to the NFL. This is
true.
Symbolic in all professional sport. Okay. I'm not comparing what he did to Evander Kane, but Evander Kane has done some rather questionable things over his career, and he gets his contract terminated with San Jose, and he finds a deal right away. Antonio Brown is a nut bar, and he keeps it. Guys with criminal record.
The only difference is, and this is where even I heard an interview locally here in Philly with a former player. The difference is this guy got the highest guaranteed take of any player in the history of the game. And so, like, as this player said, and I forget who it was, the players that are doing it right are really mad today. And they have a right to be.
I think he's making more than Josh Allen is.
Which is craziness.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, see, the thing is, and we see this in sports all the time. When you get a bidding war with teams against each other, they one-up each other in terms of money. They one-up each other in terms of draft picks. Wasn't it 3 first-round picks that they traded for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, okay, it ends up 3 first-round picks, and then he's one of the highest-paid quarterbacks when the guy sat out for a year because he was under investigation for what he was under investigation for.
Well, just think about the worst part of this. They're not even trading Baker Mayfield because they're going to need him for 6 games.
He'll
show up.
Oh, he won't. He will not show up.
Oh, you think he's just going to forfeit his salary?
No. I think he gets his signing bonus at the beginning of the football year, and then all he would lose, he's going to force a trade.
I don't think he will, Mike, because they won't have a quarterback for 6 games. And I'm telling you this right now because I've heard other people talking. Mayfield is already on thin ice, just getting another job. If he were to pull that, he might not get another job.
Oh, believe me, the whores in the NFL.
Listen, this is
wait. Let me finish. The whores in the NFL, in terms of quarterbacks, will. I mean, if they give Deshaun Watson a second look, they'll give Baker Mayfield a second look.
No, but this is a different code of conduct for
Indianapolis traded for Matt Ryan after the Carson Wentz debacle. If the guy is breathing and can move, he's going to get a job.
Well, Mayfield's not exactly great. That's one.
I'm not saying
he's a very much a me guy. That's 2. And then if he pulls this, you don't want him to do that to your organization. There are not going to be teams lining up for him. I'm telling you.
Yeah, Timothy, kiss my ass. I'm sorry. No way is Deshaun Watson better than Josh Allen.
No, he's not.
Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL, but he's one of, I'd say, the top 3 or 4.
He's top 3.
Yeah, and when Deshaun Watson, I'm not saying he's not bad. I think he's a really good quarterback. But there were holes in his game, and now you have to put character in there. So as a question, so I don't know. But anyway, so what we're gonna do, Ek is gonna be joining us in a minute. We're not gonna like grade trades because that would just be ponderous. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna look at, like, say, the Pacific Division today and talk about the teams in the Pacific Division and what they did, and say, okay, well, let's see what you think of the moves that they made. And but we'll start the show, and Ek will be joining us any minute. Go ahead. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Now, I want to hold the lead story until Ek gets here because I'm sure he has some thoughts about it. So we'll skip Anaheim in the Pacific Division and move to other teams in the Pacific, starting with the Calgary Flames. And okay, Calgary didn't do anything major on trade deadline day. The only thing that they did was bring in Ryan Carpenter from Chicago for a draft pick, and that was most likely because they lost Brad Richardson on waivers to Vancouver. But they made their moves beforehand, and sometimes that's a benefit. And in this instance, I think it was, they acquired Toffoli, they acquired Calle Jarnkrok. Russ, I think that they were one of the better teams going into the deadline, and those moves, I think, fit with what they're trying to do. And now I think they're in a better position going forward.
Yeah, I think they're in a better position. I refuse to talk about Calle Jarnkrok because it's just stupid, so I'm not going to. But whole thing, we're not getting into the whole backstory again. I don't care about.
You mean the three Swedes from the same town?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean, okay. This
as a viewer, I don't care.
Here's the criticism. He may be the greatest fit of, with that team. Fine. He's a depth forward. He's a good depth forward, and they gave up a 2, a 3, and a 7,
which is insane.
I think they got taken to the cleaners on that one.
Yeah, but again, that's what they wanted. Fine. Right. This is the Church of Daryl Sutter, and we'll see how long church stays in session because I don't think they're getting to the Stanley Cup. I don't want to crush Canada's hopes. It's just an idea that this team, they're going to do some things that are good for the playoffs, but I also think they're going to just not be good enough at times in the playoffs too. So it really depends on who the matchup is here. I don't think they're a slam dunk to get to the conference finals as an example.
Well, I think they're going to get out of their division because their division, if they win first place, then more than likely they're going to play, whoever is the second wild, whoever the first.
No, it could be, but if Vegas is fully healthy, then and they're the second wild card, that's not an easy game.
Well, whoever the first wild card is.
Okay, first.
The second wild card is likely going to be, because Colorado's got more points. It'll be Colorado. So the first wild card, which could be Dallas, which could be Edmonton, which could be Nashville.
They're capable of winning that series, no doubt.
Right, but then they would play the winner of right now it's Edmonton, LA. Let's just say I worry about the health of any Edmonton player if they come up against Calgary. I really do, because I think they will physically destroy.
I think they'll both annihilate each other to the point where neither will be able to do anything after that.
And that's where you may be right in the fact that they'll be so weakened that they'll come out of that Pacific Division wounded enough that a Colorado or a Minnesota or whoever comes out of the Central can beat them. Now Edmonton made 2 tinkering moves. Lagesson for Kulak, which honestly, I know that Korean said, "Oh, Brett Kulak." He's a marginal bottom pairing.
He can play some sort of defense. He can,
but he's marginal. He's not like a difference maker. He's a bottom pairing guy. I have nothing against him, but he's not. He's not gonna. Edmonton, to my mind, needed to significantly upgrade on the blue line and needed a goaltender, and they got neither. And then they added Derek Brassard, who's a veteran forward. That's a good add as a fourth liner. If I have no problem with that. You've seen him more than I have. So
look, there's still times where he could, still dangle it a bit and still have an offensive impact. He doesn't impact every shift anymore like he used to. But when the playoffs start, he's got a pretty good track record of scoring points in the playoffs. So I think that's a good add for them.
Yeah. But
I do want to say this.
Go ahead.
Whenever we get around to it, I think Vepsis needs to stop drinking the blue Kool-Aid. I just want to say that.
Why? What did he say?
No, you just have to read his,
Oh, the Harry Sateri thing?
No, before that.
Okay.
Well, about what the Leafs added and how, he was putting them on the same level as like Minnesota. And it's like,
okay.
As far as what they added.
I cover the team. I liked what they added, but they didn't. It's what they didn't add is what I don't like. And that might be the determining factor of them losing in the first round. So we'll talk about that when we get around to the Atlantic Division. The LA Kings, 2 minor deals on deadline day, nothing of significance. They add Troy Stetcher as a depth defenseman. Now we don't know. Because I saw that Doughty was dinged up in the last game. I haven't heard any update on it.
I haven't heard anything.
I know that Edler came back. He'd been out for a while. I thought that their defense was the area where they needed to address.
They're saying that Doughty could be out the rest of the regular season.
Okay, so Troy Stetcher is not a replacement for.
No, the Kings are going to fall out of it. They are.
I don't know about that because the goaltending is good, but losing a linchpin number 1 defenseman like Doughty is.
Trust me, without Doughty, I believe they'll fall.
It's a big hit, but I think that they're now going to fall into that mix with the wild card. The Nashvilles, the Dallases, the Edmontons, but I do think that they could sneak in. Maybe
it's not impossible, but I just think the odds are against them if Doughty's out.
Yeah. So let's see here. Wow. I'm using Cap Friendly as a tool here for search, and they have the Oakland Seals in here, so they have the history of trades, and we're not that bad that we're gonna go down that.
The white skates.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so on deadline day, the San Jose Sharks were relatively busy. Couple minor deals. but they traded Andrew Cogliano to Colorado for a 5th-round pick. They traded, and Merkley Boteto is a minor league deal. The big deal for them was swapping Jacob Middleton to Minnesota for Capo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a great ad for them because I think Kakinen can play. But it's also a great ad for Minnesota because, we were talking about, Dan was talking about them needing to get a little better defensively. Well, Middleton does that. He adds a little bit more grit. He gives them an extra 10 minutes of toughness and decent puck moving. So that's good. And Kakinen's going to be their goalie. So, I mean, I think the Sharks did well. The Boteto thing is mind-boggling because I know that Nick Merkley hasn't made it, but he's a smaller guy with a lot of skill who wasn't the fastest skater, but good enough skater. It still wouldn't shock me if he contributes a little bit in the NHL as a depth guy at some point, where Boteto is just like a tough guy. So it's like, all right, whatever. But I actually think Merkley, for the Rangers picking him up, sort of giving him another life isn't a bad move at all.
Now, I don't know if it's like the last goaltender please turn the lights out, but it's like you've now got Aiden Hill, James Reimer, your boy Alex Stalock, and now Kakinen. So you've got 4 goaltenders. I think they're going to give Kakinen a chance to earn the number 1 because nobody else is a number 1. I mean, I was puzzled at the Aiden Hill acquisition in the summer because I thought he was a decent backup, but not a potential number 1. And that's what that's what it sounded like they were driving at. And then essentially Reimer, until he got hurt, was the number 1. So,
but I think now, look, they were trying to get through this season and they did a little better than we all thought. So now they've upgraded in net. If the Sharks did a couple more things, they could at least be a very competitive team next year. They can.
Now, okay, Seattle, I have to say that I think Seattle recouped a bit of their, Ron Francis was heavily criticized for what they did in the expansion draft.
Right.
I like what they did at the deadline. So we'll just go through it quickly here. So Yarncroke, they got a 2, a 3, and a 7. That's 3 picks. For Giordano and Blackwell, they got a 2, a 2, and a 3. That's 3 more. That's 6 picks. For Lawson, they got a 2022 second. That's 7 picks. For Appleton, they got a 2023 fourth. That's 8 picks. For Marcus Johansson, they got Daniel Sprung, who I think is better than Marcus Johansson, and 2 picks.
It's arguable, but you could be right on that.
That's 10. That's 10. And then now they took Victor Rask off of Minnesota's hands for cap reasons, and they're calling it future considerations, which might be a draft pick, but it might be nothing. But they got 8 draft picks on draft day. They're now really, I think, loaded in terms of draft picks. Now, that's up to the scouting staff of the Kraken to be able to turn those draft picks into NHL players, and we won't know if that's going to be, if that's going to happen and that's going to be successful for probably 3 or 4 years. But they've given themselves the tools to do that now.
But I like the fact that they were still getting 2022 picks, yes. Whereas there's a team in Philadelphia that were getting 2023 picks. Then they were like, well, I don't think the other teams had 2022s, but it doesn't matter because that's what we were looking for, 2023s. And I'm thinking, well, okay, if you're not rebuilding, why in the world would you be punting for a year in the draft when it's going to take another year of development out of these guys? Like, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even go, like for the Flyers, it doesn't even align themselves with their game plan. Now with the Kraken, this aligns themselves with the game plan because they're loaded for this draft. They're going to make a lot of picks. They're going to get Matty Beniers in there after the playoffs. Maybe they win the Frozen Four. Maybe they don't. I'll be covering them up in Lehigh. And that's a decent place to be for a normal expansion team. Like, that's what they are. They're a normal expansion team.
Just to touch on the Frozen Four, where is the tournament at, or is it even started?
No, it's all the regionals. So I'm going to, and they all have crazy, like, this could be like the Northeast Regional or the Midwest, whatever it is. But up in Lehigh, I'll be up there for that. And Michigan's the big team up there. So
because we have started to see players sign with teams, like, McBain signed with Arizona yesterday. Some other players, there's talk about like Matthew Nyes after Minnesota is eliminated. If they're eliminated, signing with the Leafs, we don't know for sure. But then, we're starting to see that. And the speculation here in Buffalo, just to get off the Pacific page for a second, is that Owen Power, once Michigan's season is done, is going to sign his ELC.
He might go right to April 9th, though, Mike. Like that's
very possible. But season ends April 29th, so that would be 3 weeks.
Right.
And it's a benefit for him and guys like Beniers as well to burn the first year of their ELC. That's the motivation here. They're going to be in the NHL next year, but if they can burn a year of their ELC, that allows them to get to restricted free agency earlier. And if they have good early years, they can get their money a lot earlier.
There's a good 3 or 4 players that'll jump off that team, and maybe even one being signed as a free agent. What's interesting to me about the season is, in my mind, it's hard to, like, April 9th, it's like, oh yeah, April 9th, but the season ends on the 29th. Like, the regular season never ends on the 29th in the NHL. Not that late.
I know. I mean, it
throws me off.
Oh, I know. I was just sort of planning out because last year we had to do I run a fantasy playoff hockey pool, and normally we get together at one place, and it's not a draft, it's like a bidding thing. The problem is that, like, with COVID and everything, it was impossible to get a place at the last minute because the playoffs were later than they normally were last year. And thankfully we have a month to plan it, but it's like April 29th is the final day of the regular season. So we're talking May the 1st as, April 29th is a Friday. So May the 1st, the playoffs will likely start like May the 2nd of the following Monday or Tuesday. All right, so we're talking about the Pacific Division, and we saved the juicy stuff for you because a lot of
you guys can just pick on me again. So you guys can just rip into me again.
No. Eck, why would we pick on you?
We just do that all the time because it's valid.
I talked to Laidlaw this morning. He's like, those guys, man, they're pretty brutal. I'm like, yeah, And the funny thing is,
Tom Laidlaw, a guy who used to elbow people in the face, calls us.
Here's the funny thing about that. I said, when I sit next to Russ in the press box or something like that, we don't disagree on anything.
Not really, no.
I'm just kidding around. You guys are great. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so let's get into whatever.
I want to answer one question in the chat room before this way. Esmir is like, isn't the 2023 draft projected to be very deep? Okay, because I did mention that the Flyers, for some reason, have tried to make it look like they only wanted 2023 picks. They didn't want anything 2022, and it's like, listen. You never want to punt a year of development when you're not supposed to be a rebuilding team like the Flyers, because that's the message.
Right.
To me, that goes against what the message is. But as an example, I know 15 players in the 2023 draft. I have not looked at it extensively.
Right.
Teams do look at it and decide how good it's going to be, but there's also a lot of runway between now and then. And to decide now that you're just going to go with that year's draft, I can't tell you definitively that it's better, other than, yes, is their number one pick better? Yes, Connor Bedard is better than anybody in this draft. But beyond that, I don't get that feeling, and I wouldn't say it.
I saw him interviewed yesterday on during the show. We were doing the show, so I couldn't actually. I don't know if you guys saw it too when they were interviewing Connor Bedard for a second on TSN.
I didn't.
And that kid looks like he's 10 years old.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean, granted, he is still 2 years from being drafted, so it's like, yeah, he's still, what is he, 15?
16.
I mean, he looks like he's 12. Like, honestly, it's crazy. I mean, I thought, Patrick Kane, when he was drafted, was the youngest looking player I've ever seen drafted in my mind. But when I was just going up to Patrick Kane, I don't know who's lying yet, but it's just astonishing me anyway. But he looks like he's got it together. Looks like
he does. I mean, he'll be fine by the time that. Yeah. Especially by the time.
But it's not only Bedard, it's Mishkov as well. So he's going to be in that draft as well.
Yeah. Right. But
that's a complicating factor.
That's a complicating factor now that wasn't a complicating factor a year ago.
And then they say the 2024 draft is really deep too. That was the latest thing I heard too.
But again, I don't
How do you know? How do you know?
I know. Listen. This is what I know definitively when I go through draft stuff. I see names for the the next year's draft. I see them for 2024. I've got files. I put guys in there.
Yeah.
I don't look at it to the point where I say, that next one, that's way better than this one that I'm focusing on. I never do that.
He's got files, folks.
Well, I do. I
know you.
12 years of files.
Rest of the files on all of you. It doesn't matter if you're a prospect. Doesn't matter if you're in our chat room right now.
Think about it.
This is the hockey version of the CIA.
No, but you guys will ask me about a player.
Listen, that's your superpower, man.
It's the only way I could ever keep up. It's like you or Kevin or Mike will be like, well, what about this guy? Or Jan. Well, how about
and
it's like, I don't know 1,200 players, but I have a lot of files on.
No, I can't tell you the invaluable resource that is. I mean, for all the things you're wrong about, like with other stuff, it's like you are really like incredibly solid when it comes to prospects, and it's just like I think that's really good.
But there's plenty of guys I don't know. Like that's
unlike Russ, I'm never wrong. But okay, so this is the latest because we heard the situation with the Anaheim and Vegas. Apparently, the way Elliot Friedman described this, there was
I talked to somebody at the NHL too, so I know.
Okay, but let me just lay it out here, and then
do Elliot's version, and I'll give you mine. I haven't heard his version yet.
Okay, so what he said was that there was a miscommunication between Ottawa and Vegas when the original deal was made, trading Dadonov to the Golden Knights in, I think it was June the 30th, that he had not filed the paperwork in terms of the no trade clause, like submitted a list of teams.
A list.
Now, Dadonov's agent, who I don't know who it is. I'm not sure if it's Milstein or Mark Gandler or whoever, but basically provided the proof that it was filed.
Yeah.
And that now this trade is in danger because he said, okay, this is the exact word. So, somehow on the trade call from Ottawa to Vegas, the Golden Knights and the NHL were led to believe the protection had expired, had not been filed properly, but there was correspondence proving no trade paperwork was filed correctly and on time on June 30th. So we will see how this is adjudicated. Dadonov is sort of caught in the crossfire here. David Pagnotta reported about a half hour ago that according to a contact in the PA, the expectation is the Dadonov trade could be voided and should be
going to be voided. For everybody I've talked to, I mean, he's Pagnotta might be more cautious about saying that. I won't be. Just from talking to people today, if they didn't void it now, every side would be angry. Like this is not a players versus owners thing. This is like an owners versus Vegas and a players versus Vegas thing. That's what's happening here. Like no one thinks this should have happened, should be allowed to happen. Maybe Anaheim's okay with it because they got a player they wanted, but I just think that this is absurd. Why is it absurd? Well, here's the thing. Here's why. I talked to a GM this morning who I know pretty well, who you guys probably know who I'm talking about. And I talked to this guy this morning about, what are your thoughts on this? What happens? He's like, well, here's the procedure. He's like, this is the procedure when I make a trade. If I'm going to make a trade. I have every player's contract on my computer, their contract, their actually written contract with all the details of their contract. He's like, so I pull up their contract, and he's like, this guy I was talking to was a lawyer, really educated guy. He says, but I have lawyers. We have team lawyers. I send that contract off to the lawyer and I say, tell me if there's anything in here that I have to be aware of before I make this trade. He said, and that's what you do before even for players. He's like that I know would not have a no movement clause in their contract.
Right. Just to make sure,
because it's such a simple thing to do. We pay these guys on retainer for a reason. Give them the contract. You give these lawyers the contract, right, to do it. That's what they do. And that's all this would have taken because.
Well, wouldn't McPhee know if nothing else?
No, he wouldn't. But there's a couple different.
He's only been there 1 year. I thought he's been there a few years, Dave. Oh yeah, I guess it's just 1 year.
McPhee's involved still, but he's not nearly as involved as I thought he was. Including when I found out more things today. Like this is really.
McCrum is the GM, but sometimes they have other guys doing more of the paperwork stuff. That's why.
Yeah, McPhee's not a paperwork guy. That's not his thing.
Right.
But this is why you have lawyers. McPhee's a hockey guy.
Yeah.
And originally McPhee was like bringing in McCrimmon because they didn't want to lose McCrimmon. Remember how McCrimmon stayed? They thought he was going to get traded. They thought he was going to sign. He threatened to be taking off interviews at other places anyway. They probably should have let him do that. But They kept him on, and McCrimmon became very tight with the owner, is what I was told today. And the owner and McCrimmon are very tight. McPhee has been pushed out basically of any hockey decision over the year.
Oh, okay, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like he's been eased out while McCrimmon and the owner's very involved type owner.
Well, I was going to say that it may be the fact that the owner is pressing the buttons or saying jump, and McCrimmon is saying how high, because
but you still have to know procedurally what's going on.
Right, and the owner's mad at McCrimmon too. Like everybody's mad at McCrimmon because like the owners just would assume that McCrimmon would have to be on top of this. The owner's not going to sit there and say,
right. This doesn't have to do with job security, Mike. This has to do with just procedure and
no, I'm talking about McCrimmon doing like
no, I get that.
We can get into that debate, but this is a different thing.
That's a different debate. Yeah.
That is a definite debate that's worth having at some point. Maybe not till after the season, we'll see, but that's another debate. But so basically, there's a couple different ways that this has been told. The way L.A. Freeman describes it is a shortened version, but not complete. If I get it, I'm looking at it now. I brought it up on Twitter so I could see it. But look at the way he's describing it now. It's not exactly how I was told it. So I mean, it's the same ending, but at the end of the day, how you get there is a little bit different. Like he says that the Knights in NHL were led to believe the protection had expired, been not filed properly, right?
Right.
I get that they thought that, but when I first heard to someone in Vegas, they thought that they never had that protection in the first place, so I'm thinking that they are actually like covering up a little bit. I think this was more of a mistake of them when he was traded to again, this is speculation on my part. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But this is how the first thing I got before everybody started like kind of like cleaning up their stories here a little bit was when we got him from Vegas, when they got him from Ottawa, they didn't know they had a no protection thing. So they assumed he didn't, and then they went in and did this without assuming that that might not be the case. It might be this other thing of they thought it expired or whatever. This is definitely a better way of
I haven't heard this, but remember, I'm pretty sure June 30th was before the new CBA applied. It was because the new CBA applied at the beginning of this season, I believe, right?
I think it's last season.
It was okay. It was last season. Okay, so then it was under the current CBA. Yeah. But the thing is, the current CBA, if a player was traded that had a no move clause, that no move clause moved to the new team. It was like you waived the no move clause to go to whatever, and then it's back in place. Before, once it was waived, it never came back. So maybe they were under the impression that was the case again. But what's going on here is, I mean, apparently. Go ahead, Russ.
There's something even more simple than this, and Bruce Variot's pointed it out. If you go to Cap Friendly, it lists
it's on there.
Right.
That's the craziest thing about it.
The crazy part of this.
This took very little research, like incredible amount. But the issue also comes up to that I believe that he probably had something else he was trying to do to clear cap space, because otherwise he would have traded Dadonov a week ago, and he didn't do that. So and then as 3 o'clock.
Oh, come on. Here we go.
No, I'm not doing anything. Just come on. Just
no.
It's 3 o'clock.
You're gonna go back to Riley Smith again.
Well, no, he was never going to trade Riley Smith. He got offers about it.
Good.
He had great offers about it. He was never going to do that. He had something else he was going to do, I think, because it feels like at 3 o'clock, the 3 o'clock approach, he's just panicked with that. Like, and Dadonov was the only way to do it, and that was the original only way to do it. But I had been told they had figured out something else, because remember, Dadonov rumors were 3 weeks ago. And that they would move, and then that kind of disappeared. And Dadonov scored a bunch of goals in the meantime there.
Yeah, he scored a lot of goals.
He got really hot, and he won a couple games.
Which made him more attractive to trade.
But there were 2 games he won in there, like flat out won the games. He ties and beats Florida in that one game with 2 goals. Thanks. It's like the game before that, I think with the Sharks it was.
I got to tell you though, Ek, my gut feeling on this was that Vegas wanted the cap space so badly they tried to slide this through.
I think that's exactly what happened, but they did it. And I don't think they knew that they were doing anything wrong. I think they just didn't do the research on it.
Correct.
I don't think
they were just like, "Hey, this is perfect."
Yeah, let's do it. In the back of their minds, they're like, "If we can't pull anything else off, we can always do this." And I think that's what they thought, and they had this. They didn't really want to trade him, I was told, at the end of the day, because he was playing so well, and they saw him as like, okay, he can help us get into the playoffs, because that is usually important to this owner getting into the playoffs.
Yes.
I think this more than any other team.
It's too important at this point because it's going to kill the franchise one day.
Yeah, I think more than any other team, this owner is demanding the playoffs. So when you look at that situation, you look at what they've done and how they've handled it.
He's Steinbrenner, basically.
He is.
And I've heard, I've never met him personally. I've heard different things about him, everything from like, he's just like an Ed Snyder, like gotta, win type thing, to like, he's really like super intense, almost rude. I've heard all different sorts of things about him. Okay. So I don't want to speak about him. I'll always, as you guys know, tend towards an owner who goes for it versus an owner who's just
absolutely. Yeah.
An owner who cares about it like this much, who really wants his team to win, versus an owner who this is like another tax column in his write up. I'd rather have that. I like this kind of owner.
Well, the thing that because they were talking about this on the radio this morning, the thing that Friedman brought up, and that might be the repercussion of this deal, is how did it get approved originally? And it probably got approved because the NHL didn't know the no trade provisions in Dadonov's contract, and that more than likely the solution to this is that the NHL is going to have every no trade provision of every player in their Rolodex, essentially.
All right. Well, Mike, this is how it was told to me, and I think this makes some sense. The NHL does obviously care about no trade clauses and all that stuff, but there is sort of a unwritten thing that, that's your responsibility, teams. Don't make us have to look that up.
No, that makes sense.
It's in the contract.
It's your player. You should know what's going on with your player. We got
33 trades and whatever, in queue here, as we talked about, it's like, it's so.
And all operators were on hold.
Yeah. So the NHL to me is like,
and it was 3. It wasn't 33. It had to be.
I know it was 3. But it really was, the NHL transaction list that went out just a little bit ago didn't have this on it. I don't know if you noticed that. It didn't have this trade on it.
Yes. I did notice that.
I think that there's just no way that this happens. And if this doesn't happen, now we can talk about what the ramifications are of that.
Well, I mean, it is possible, again, because it's Ottawa and they're out of it, that they can make this trade, and just that he wouldn't be,
Well, Ottawa has nothing to do with it anymore.
Ottawa's not just Anaheim we're talking about.
Anaheim, sorry. I don't know why I said
but even Anaheim, they're out of it too. You could
they're
say
out of it too, so you still can make the trade.
Anaheim wanted him. Okay, so but here's the tough spot about it. I talked to somebody.
He doesn't want to go to Anaheim. That's
do you make this puts Dadonov in an unbearably ridiculous situation? So because Dadonov, is sitting there with the team that traded him, and no player wants to return to a team that traded him, no matter what. Like that's like you're done, However, Dadonov, when you look at his career, he went from a bad Florida Panthers team to a bad Ottawa Senators team to a bad, and then eventually ends up on a good Vegas team. Does he want to go to another rebuilding team in Anaheim? No, I'm not saying they're a bad team. They're better than the other 2 teams he was on. But do you want to go there? I mean, maybe he does. But do you even give him the option? Do you even give him the chance? Because it's just the whole thing's illegal. Like the whole thing is wrong. So
but here's what ends up happening. So Dadonov's agent calls up, right? He calls up Vegas and says, my client does not want to go there. However, if you pay us X amount, we'll agree to it.
That's illegal.
It's not illegal.
It is illegal.
That's totally illegal. I don't think there's any way you can do that because
you can't slip $1 million.
Also, you can't make a trade now. The deadline's over.
No, you can't make it. Well, they can make a trade, just like the player wouldn't be allowed to be on the postseason roster.
That's true. That's a good point. You can make a trade, but the player can't make a trade. That is something that we never even thought about.
They probably actually.
Like if someone has to clear cap space, that could still happen, right?
They probably actually want John Moore to be able to play regular season games because he was part of the deal going back to.
No, they actually picked him up because he was hurt. I was told, and
and Kessler was LTIR too, so that's 8.
The idea was just to get LTIR money because they were trying to get Stone back in, and they were trying to get
Martinez,
who played last night, by the way. So he was in last night. So was he in last night only because of the Dadonov thing?
Yes, I bet you anything he was.
Which is like, does that make that whole thing? Like, they lost, but if they had won that game, couldn't you protest?
No, because at that point, the NHL approved the deal. at that point, the NHL approved the deal. So
I guess so.
It will go back. Like if they say the deal is voided, then it goes back to now. Dadonov didn't play for Anaheim. I mean, he didn't get on a plane to Anaheim. He's still in limbo.
Yeah. So unless if they can't give a financial inducement to drop the no trade, they're just going to put pressure on them to drop it.
Right. I was going to say that's the only thing here is you know the agent and the Vegas basically says, okay, we don't want you anymore.
Right.
We need to clear cap space. If you want to come back to a situation where we don't want you, okay, that's your
right. That's what they're going to do.
But that'll really help.
Right, but they're in a this is the situation with Vegas, and I don't think this feel good story from 2018, this little engine that could, they've turned into a whorehouse. It's like the whorehouse
turned into Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, it's a great point, Mike, and I'm glad you're finally coming over to my side of things. But I want to say this.
No, that part's true. It is true.
That part's true.
Here's the thing.
Playoffs.
The last night I'm sitting there, well, that's just you're just going to die on that hill, but that's okay. We'll see. Obviously, at this point, I mean, so I watched the game last night, and
don't jump to the game. Go back.
No. It all applies into what we're talking about. There's only reason I'm watching that game, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the first time I have seen the Vegas Golden Knights. I could actually say that looks like an expansion team, kids. Like I'm watching them play, and they look like an expansion team. No doubt.
Yeah, all their stars are hurt.
I know.
Michael's hurt. Stone's hurt. Reddy's hurt.
And who's sitting on the bench for the Minnesota Wild but Marc-Andre Fleury, right? And it's like, and as I'm sitting and watching this thing, I'm like, there is that. That's why my article today was "The Hockey Gods Can Be Cruel." That's why it was titled that. But I went through the whole thing of what's happened with Vegas and how this has gotten to this point, and all the mistakes that they've tried to cover with other mistakes, and all the different things that they keep screwing up along the way, and all the people they've alienated, and all the situations that they take into this team that was like, and like Layla said, how is Fleury and Gallant, how are they not given lifetime contracts after the first 2 seasons they had there? And it's like, because the whole thing has left such a bad taste in so many players' mouths that they went from a destination where people wanted to play to a place where no one wants to go. And you're going to see them have a real hard time to sign UFAs now until they make some major changes, and they're going to lose Riley Smith for nothing, regardless of whether or not they're going to lose him for nothing. He's going to.
Well, they can trade his rights at the draft, so they won't. They'll get a 5th rounder or a 6th rounder.
Nothing, basically, Russ. So I mean, we call that nothing, right? So
I might not.
Well, yeah, but the 5th rounder, is what 8%.
I know. Listen, even if it's a 15% odds, it's better than 0 odds.
All right, I'm sure there's
Buffalo Sabres that.
I'm sure if they moved him yesterday to the Rangers, they would have gotten.
Oh no, they get a lot more. That's true.
They were in a golden situation to help their cap space.
A golden situation.
He's one of their best forwards.
You would kill their playoffs if you did that. Why would they do that?
That would be a self-fulfilling.
Because Dadonov is actually signed, and he's cheap.
But he's not. No, he's not cheap. He's a $5 million player. Kelly McCrimmon could be the creator of his own demise because that trade made no friggin' sense from the moment we saw it.
Never made any sense.
From the moment we talked about it, they got rid of Nick Holden's contract and they bring in Dadonov. It made no sense, especially for a cap-strapped team.
I know.
I still think they're making the playoffs, but if people keep dropping like flies, then maybe not. No,
I mean, and even if they come back, they've got a battle. And it depends on how many people come back, when they come back. They're in a battle now. They're at 1 point up on Dallas with four games in hand. So Dallas could, if they win half those games, they're up by 3.
Can we just move on from this? Can we?
Okay, so okay, let's get back to.
Gary Ewing's dead too. I just want to let you know that.
Let's get back to.
What's interesting? Before we move on, we will move on. I promise. I'm not trying to be like a jerk here. I'm really not. Okay.
You've pivoted from the Islanders to the Stars with the games. I admitted
when the Islanders were done like that.
Yeah, you admitted 2 months later.
No, I admitted when I really thought it was done.
Okay.
You guys will. There'll be 7 points out of a playoff spot in 2 weeks, and you still won't be admitting.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
All right, we'll see.
My God. Okay, so what we were doing,
chat room. Before we go on, Mike,
go ahead.
We'll go through the Pacific, but chat room. I want you to to say flat out in the chat room. Say you're with Ek or say you're with Mike. Okay. or stay with Muss. Stay with Mike and Russ. Muss. Write either Eck or Muss about this Vegas situation. Eck or Muss. And I want to see the chat rooms.
I love you, folks. Vote for me.
Eck or Muss.
So anyway. Okay,
right.
so
we'll wait on the response.
We talked.
Let's slow down the whole show and wait on that.
Okay,
No, you continue on.
There's 3 musses to no X.
3 musses.
Right,
I'm keeping track.
3 musses. So eat it. Okay.
All the musses think they're going to make the playoffs. Go for it.
Okay, Eck is going to be the guy who disputes the election. All right, so. Okay, we didn't talk about Anaheim, so we waited on that one. But Anaheim trades all 4 of their pending UFAs. For Manson, they get Hellison in a second. For Delorier, they get a third. For Lindholm, they get more Vakanainen and 3 picks. And for Raquel, they get Simone, Aston Reese, and Callie Klang, who Brian Burke was.
I mentioned that yesterday. I said one of the 2 goalies. I said I would take one of the 2 goalies, and it ended up being that. Well, that could be
absolutely. No, you dad's. I don't respect that.
But that's a good move for them. It is, because Kelly Klein can play.
Okay, here's Art Garfunkel saying, I can't keep agreeing with Mike, but I can't not agree with Russ.
There you go.
That's a tough call on that.
We'll do the count in a little bit, but get your votes in. Remember what you're voting for. Remember what you're voting for. You're voting for whether or not you think Vegas is going to make the playoffs or not make the playoffs.
Here you go, folks. I'll tell you this: if you
think Vegas is going to make the playoffs, write Muss. If you think Vegas is not going to make the playoffs,
this is like American Idol. Go
ahead.
Okay. So I think that Pat Verbeek did an excellent job because
he did.
You've loaded up with 1, 2, 3, 4 second-round picks, a first-round pick, and a third-round pick for players that were likely not re-signing with you. And it doesn't prevent you. There's been talk about Manson going back to Anaheim. They got tons of cap space. I don't know if Raquel is going back there or Delorier.
He did a fantastic job. He did a really fantastic job.
Yeah. So, I think Anaheim did great. Granted, it's going to take them 2 or 3 years. We thought it was going to take them 2 or 3 years to build. So what they did this year, getting great performances out of Zegras and Troy Terry, and Drysdale playing in the NHL for the entire year. I think that hastened the rebuild, and Mason McTavish is going to be really good, but it's going to take a few years to fill out that roster.
And they may have picked up their goalie of the future in Kelly Klein.
Yeah, how good is he, Russ?
He's very good. He was on the World Junior team. He is a top-notch goalie. He's got that number 1 type pedigree. Will take a little time, but he was a top goalie prospect in that draft. That was a deep goalie draft when the Penguins took both of those guys.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I'm gonna have to go in like 3 minutes, guys.
All right. Well,
I want to do let's see what else we have here. Edmonton. They didn't get a goalie.
We already did. Okay, we said Calgary made good moves before the line, but nothing.
They did. Agreed.
Edmonton was woefully. They didn't address any of their needs. They didn't really improve on the blue line. Their goaltending is still the same hunk of crap that it's been all year. LA. We pointed out that Doughty. There are some reports he could be out the rest of the year, and if that's the case, Troy Stetcher is not exactly a great replacement.
I thought they would do more defensively for sure.
San Jose. The only thing criticism of their moves is the fact that now they have 4 goalies. Now they have Hill, Reimer, Stalock, and Kakkonen. It's like I'm assuming that Kakkonen is going to be the number 1 down going, for the rest of the year, so they see what they got. But it's like,
I think he's going to play tonight.
Right. They gave up an inexpensive, tough defenseman in Middleton for a goalie. And, if they think Kakkonen's the guy, then okay.
That's an upgrade. It's hard to get a number 1. If he turns into a number 1, we'll be laughing about this deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Seattle got, I think, like 10 draft picks for a lot of the guys they picked up in the expansion draft. So I think Francis did a real good job sort of adjusting to what they did previously.
He did. You would expect that he could have gotten more better picks, but he didn't, with the players he picked. But, I think he did okay. He got what? How many?
Honestly, I don't think you were going to get a first-round pick from anybody for Giordano at 38 years old. Giordano 3 years ago, sure.
Yeah, he would have got 3 years ago. You'd have gotten it.
I think
I agree with that. That's that. I mean, and I think, so that's Seattle, Arizona tried to get the cap space, right?
Yeah. Now Vancouver.
Yeah.
They traded Travis Hamonic, they brought back Travis Dermott, and they traded Tyler Mott for a draft pick. So Rutherford didn't do anything. He didn't do the JT Miller deal. He didn't do Besser. He
didn't sell. He didn't sell because that tells you that he thinks they've got a shot. So
that doesn't tell you that he thinks they have a shot. That tells you the
owner thinks. I'll go with you on that one.
Right, exactly. And then it also tells you that he thinks he can get better value in the summer than he can.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
Right. So, but thinking that they have as much of a chance of making the playoffs as Winnipeg does, and Winnipeg doesn't have a chance of making the playoffs.
Winnipeg is 1 point out of a playoff spot if they beat.
I don't think. Okay, and I'm somebody who picked.
They not have a chance when they have 20 games left.
But okay, what Winnipeg, and we'll talk about this when we do the Central. What Winnipeg did was sell their rentals and then they brought back Mason Appleton to replace Andrew Kopp.
Yeah.
They traded out Beaulieu.
Yeah.
The left hand doesn't know
the hope that they stay in it. That's what
the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. You don't subtract and add at the same time. You either add or you subtract.
No, some teams do this now. Might be.
Appleton, they loved Appleton. They hated losing Appleton. They got him back. I'm not surprised about that.
The owner wants to act like they're still in the playoff hunt. I get it.
They have Vegas tonight. If they beat Vegas tonight, they're in the playoff hunt. I mean, that's the reality. I mean,
that's fair. You can say that.
I mean, they'll be 1 point behind Vegas.
I'm probably pissing off.
Enjoying Dallas being 1 point behind Vegas for the last 3 weeks.
I'm probably pissing off Peter by saying that the Winnipeg is done. Maybe me saying Winnipeg is done will get Winnipeg in the playoffs.
You're wearing that hat. You're chasing this like some lost treasure. That's what you're doing.
Yesterday he dresses like Roy Clark from Hee Haw. Today he's dressing like friggin' Jimmy Buffett.
I can't help it if I'm more stylish than both you guys.
Listen, yesterday you were dapper. There's no question about it.
I appreciate it. I mean, I
can't. That's one word for it.
I'm hipper than you both are, and that's just the reality. So let's just move on. All right. So
you can move on.
You're both great people. And I do have to go, and I'm really sorry. I have a doctor's appointment with my son. I have to leave. I apologize for being late because I was on the doctor beforehand. Thank you guys so much I wanted to say quickly to everybody out there watching today. Great numbers, incredible responses. I loved it. And everybody who worked on the show today did incredible jobs too. You'll all be getting something special in your Christmas stocking this year for sure. And we just appreciate it. So we will, I will see you again tomorrow for sure. And it'll be a lot easier then. So thanks guys. We got to go. And,
we'll finish out the show with some questions.
I won, by the way, 6-5, but that's all we care about. Anyway.
No, you did not.
I just counted. Bye.
Well, I believe him.
No, I don't.
I believe him.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Now we're not going to answer questions. We're going to end the show so the chat room gets chastised for this.
But he didn't win. I counted it. He lost. Yes, he lost. He just said that so he could exit stage left. And
so what was the real count?
It was 8-6 us. Good job, people.
Thank you for voting for us.
Love you.
Now we'll answer questions.
Timothy Park in the chat brings up what we were talking about in our group text, the Leafs alternate jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I absolutely despise that reverse retro abomination, that color of vomit. Putting in a gray jersey with a leaf that you could see from a satellite 50 miles up in space. I don't mind the black jersey that they had. That one is okay. And almost any jersey looks good with black instead of the other one is a joke jersey. I don't think it's real. It's adjustable.
Yeah, the leaf was half the size. Like they did that on purpose. I think the black and blue jersey should be worn when the Leafs are facing elimination in the first round. That's what I think.
So we're on May 10th?
In the first round? I said the first round. Is that May 10th? I don't know.
May 1st is the beginning of the playoffs. So
yeah, but if they go out four straight, then it'll be quicker than
that. The world is always sunny it is always sunny in the world of Russ Cohen. Okay, let's see.
Answer Vepsis' question. If you can go all the way back after this question, look for Vepsis where he, because I had shot down what he had said. I want to give him equal time on what he was asking after that.
I'm not sure which question.
Vepsis, can you just type it in again? Thank you. I know you're You're in a land far away, but
yes,
you can do that.
It's late afternoon where Vepsis is.
Yeah, so that means it's beer time.
It's always beer time in Finland.
Yeah,
or vodka time, or
is it midsummer yet? No, not yet. Right, it's like another month or two.
Okay, your Stanley Cup prediction after the trade deadline.
Same one I had preseason, Florida, Minnesota. I changed nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's looking pretty good right now.
It doesn't look bad.
No, I mean, remember, this idiot picked the Islanders to come out of
it. I do remember.
Yeah, I mean, I based on.
But you're not the only one.
Yeah, I thought Tampa Bay took a step back after losing all those players, and the Islanders had been to the conference final twice in a row and added players. I thought, okay, sure. But yeah, no. Let's see here. Paul Simon. Okay, again, 50 ways to answer your question. Do you think teams will trade packages for next year's draft picks for this year's? No.
I don't think that's necessarily a trend. I just think a couple of teams were thinking that way, and I don't get it, and that's fine.
The narrative out there I heard somebody say was, well, the research is not complete on the 2022 draft class because they missed an entire season in some cases. And teams would feel more comfortable having another year of stats, another year of observations on players. Now, what this tells me is that teams that have that mentality are not comfortable with their scouting staff making determinations on players.
I mean that.
And the teams that do have good scouting, again, Tampa, and Toronto. I think Toronto's got pretty good scouting.
Mm-hmm.
Now Toronto, neither one has a ton of draft picks, but they will probably hit a jackpot with less picks than some of these teams with more picks, because they know what they're doing. So I don't know. Let's see. Vepsis, I think this is the question.
Yes.
To judge on the Leafs not being winners of the deadline, who do you think were besides the Wild?
I think the Florida Panthers, they gave up very little for Claude Giroux. I mean, we could start there. I think that's forgotten about now because it just didn't happen yesterday. But the Florida Panthers made some great moves. But what they got Claude Giroux for? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, okay, they got a very useful defenseman for a 6th round pick in Hogg. Yep. They got. I think they overpaid for Sherratt, but they got the guy that they wanted.
Right.
And they got Giroux for. So it's sort of like what they did before the season. They overpaid, or like Buffalo got overpaid for Ristolainen, but didn't get enough for Reinhart. In this instance, they paid too much for Sherratt, but they didn't pay enough for Giroux.
So for Hogg. So I mean, so it balanced out.
Right. I would say Colorado did pretty well getting Manson.
Yeah, they did. Manson went under the radar just because it didn't happen yesterday. Yeah,
Manson, Cogliano. I mean, they didn't get Giroux. I think the Rangers did pretty well, but
Rangers did well, but they gave up a lot.
They gave up a lot, and somebody who had the question is like, okay, the argument for Calgary is that they got players that they know or they're very comfortable that they think are going to fit in with the team that they have right now, whereas the Rangers got 3 guys in Mott, in Kopp, and in Braun that you don't know how they're going to fit. Well,
I kind of do. I think they're 3 upgrades. I think Mott will be their 4th line center. Kopp will be their 3rd line center. Braun will be a 3rd pairing defenseman, and they're all really good at those jobs. Like they're not going to even, if they do it that way, you don't have to play one guy up or out of position or anything.
Right. All right.
That's a bonus.
We'll end it there. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzz.
Say one thing about the Penguins. Yeah. The Ashton Reese, they're gonna miss him. Raquel's really good. Like, I don't know what that's gonna do. Is that enough of an upgrade to get out of the first round? If they play the Rangers in the first round now, I'm taking the Rangers.
Well, the way Burke described it on the radio this morning was Raquel is a Swiss Army knife that plays in your top 6, meaning he can play multiple positions. Ashton Reese is a Swiss Army knife in the bottom 6. They felt that they needed somebody higher in the lineup that could play with skill on those top 2 lines. So it sounds like Raquel.
Theirs was a give and take, like other teams
right
just added.
because they didn't have the cap space.
Right. So that's the dangerous part for the Penguins is they had to really give to get. And I don't know if they get out of the first round as a result.
Right. And an organization nearly bereft of prospects traded a second round pick and a goalie prospect. Now, they think that they have another prospect, and Jari is young. So
Blomqvist is a good goalie too, but Klang was the better goalie.
Right. So, maybe internally they think the other guy is a better goaltender, but
I'm sure they do.
Yeah. But okay. We'll be back tomorrow for the stylish and departed Eklund and Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.